Today I just want to step you through some of the development work that we've done with Cabinetry Online to link Cabinetry Online's database with our production management system, production assistant. So we've worked together to effectively marry the two databases to synchronize with each other so that anybody that's purchasing or purchased a Cabinetry Online system now has the ability to integrate Production Assistant as a plug and play solution. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to step you through maybe 3 or 4 areas that I think are standouts, and just to dig a little bit deeper into what that production system now can look like and enhance when you have the Cabinetry Online system in your business. So if we come into something like this screen here, and we start with the status dashboard, really good place to start. So when we import a job in, we raise a ticket, work order, and we import that into the production system. It will import how many components are required to be cut, or how many components are required for hardware, or basically tracking what needs to happen at each stage. So in this case, we've got 5 touch points: a CNC, a sorting station, a kitting and hardware station, and a shipping station. So 5 touch points, which is, I must say, it's probably the average or common amount of touch points that are taking place in a flat pack or cut to size business. What we can do is we can click on the 98% icon here, and it will tell us what parts are missing. So in this case, we've got 2 doors that are potentially damaged, and we've got 1 part here that hasn't been scanned or interacted with. So we can identify what parts haven't been interacted with at the CNC station. At the sorting station, what's taken place is that there's a number of parts that have been sorted, while there's some components that are yet to be actioned. So we can see here potentially a cabinet is yet to be actioned or scanned in. Here we've got a couple of doors. Here we've got 2 more doors which we know are damaged because they're orange. This face parent material is missing, and another part. So when it says missing, it may not have been scanned into the sorting rack as yet. We can see that 7% of kitting has taken place. Hardware, some components may have been picked already, while shipping, there's nothing that's really changed at that point. So it's a really informative dashboard around where the job is up to through the various stages of production, all coming from the Cabinetry Online database. If we look at this particular screen here, so this is at our hardware station. If we have a look here, we can start to see that basically the items have been regrouped based on size or quantity. So the assembly screw is a good example where there would be a certain amount of quantity of screws associated with each cabinet or component, which we've basically regrouped together to give us a total amount of screws required. If we look at something like the inner drawer front as an example, if we were to go through and print that particular product label, we would end up with a product label that looks like this. So I've just loaded this label up, so I've just printed it to PDF so that we can see we've got our barcode, we've got our job number, we've got our descriptive, we've got a quantity of 3. And beauty of this is we've also got the height of the metal drawer front as well as the width. So that's really handy if someone's got to go to a saw and dock that and chop that, and then we can basically easily identify what that component for that is. So I've just loaded up the window. Now we're going to click on Kit. I'm going to select the work order that we're working in, and I'm going to select parts. So this is going back to the granular amount of components. If I create a kit, every plus symbol that I create creates the next kit, so kit 5, kit 6. So if we were wanting to interact with this with the barcode scanner, we could scan a barcode, and that component would then go and be added to a said kit. So in this case, I'll simulate that by just selecting these components manually. Okay, so I'm just going to pick the number 3s. So I'll just keep going a couple more. And then once I'm happy with that, I could go approve, and that will sit over on the right hand side here. Okay, and then it would be possible for me to print that label, and we would end up with a label that would look like this. So in this case, it's kit number 2, and we'll list obviously the components that have been scanned into that kit. And then what it will do is the moment we scan the barcode of this label at the shipping station, it's creating an inventory of the parts that are associated with that kit so that we can effectively QA the line and identify that all parts have been interacted with or if certain parts are missing. So then once we get further down the line to something like the shipping station, so what we would expect to see is that a lot of these statuses would be changed to kitted or approaching the shipping station. So as that takes place, we're scanning parts onto a skid or a pallet. The status of these will change, and once they effectively say scanning as perhaps shipped, once they all say shipped, we can then go through and we can generate a shipping report. So in this case, it won't be completed in its entirety. But again, as we start to go through this, the descriptives and the scan times will start to be displayed. The scan would, again, a scan date, if we scanned it today, have the scan date on the left-hand side, and the scan would go from 0 to 1. And if we were starting to create more and more kits and we start to detach these, what we could end up with is perhaps 10 items that comprise of 10 kits. And you can sort of see here in some aspects, some of these parts have started to be interacted with, and we would start to see those come through, like we're sort of seeing down the bottom here. It might be a particular kit, but the statuses would not change until we scan or interact with that, but we can get a shipping report or a dispatch report at the end of that line. One other area that I'd like to show you is the sorting rack. So like I was sort of talking about a little bit earlier around the various stages of production, we might be talking about cutting into edging and then edging into sorting. So what would mean would be is that as the parts are getting edged on the edger and they're coming through in an inconsistent manner, those parts are then able to be scanned, and what will happen is when we scan a part, it'll auto assign to the next available bay. So what's effectively happening, we scan a barcode and it may pick bay 37 for this particular cabinet. What will happen as we scan various parts, they will start to go through and find their way to the correlating cabinet number or product number. And if a product was designed and it had 8 components, then the sorting rack will be looking for the 8 components for that particular cabinet to say that all parts have been received. So in this case, this particular bin, we've got a left and a right, we've got a top and a bottom, we've got a vertical panel, a couple of shelves in this case. We can see by clicking on the information tab, we've got a height and width, and all of this information is coming from the Cabinetry.Online system. So again, all of the strings of data have been matched so that we can read that and identify what those parts are in this system. If a part was missing or damaged, we can click on the part and identify that as a part error. That might be the edger. We can add more descriptives or locations where that is happening, so that the idea of it is as a part is damaged or identified as missing, that notification goes to the office or the departments that we choose so that those parts can be rectified to complete those shipments. The idea of it is here when we go through here, also it gives us a status of how far off we are from being completed. So we're 89% towards our sorting goal. And anything that's missing or damaged, we can sort of see here 1 of 2 in this case. And quite possibly when we go into here, one of these parts might be missing or damaged in this particular bin. And one more item just to show would be that for those that are just cutting on the CNC and edging and want a simple system for QAing that the parts that have come from the online order have been cut and edged and straight onto a skid or a pallet or a wrapped, what we can do is we can go through and we can have what's called a part list. So this is more of a simplistic screen. So we might not have sorting, we might not have hardware, or we might have a hardware and not sorting. So what we can do is we can interact with it so that we have a part list straight from the online order. Order comes through, gets cut and edged, and now we're wanting to scan parts as they come off the edge bander and straight onto a skid or a pallet. So if that was to happen, we could have this window open, scan a barcode of the label that's coming off the CNC, And what will happen is it will start to create an inventory of starting at 0 up to, in this case, 112, and it would interact with it so that those parts have been validated as being received or actioned. So that's really handy for when we're going through and not necessarily going through sorting or not necessarily going through kitting, straight off the end of the CNC into the edge bander and then straight onto a skid. We can scan that component. So again, simply, we could have a simple part list in this case of if and when a scan has taken place at this particular station, that we can then go and see that each part has been interacted with or scanned. In this case, there's a lot of pages. There's 8 pages of componentry. But again, it would also be another part summary report that could be generated if we wished to display that information that way, rather than sorting it and kitting it individually. We could just go and say that these parts have been interacted with and are on that particular skid. All of the terminology and all of the descriptives are coming straight from the Cabinetry.Online Database. So thanks for taking the opportunity to watch some of the various areas that I've covered. If any of this makes you want to sort of reach out and have some other questions, or you'd like to find out a little bit more, I'd be more than happy to do a bit of a more detailed demonstration with you and show you some of the different areas around how the production management system can work. It is possible to only have 1 or 2 touch points if you wish. It's possible to have more. It's possible to present the data in a way that is relevant to what stage or station you're wanting to capture, and to ultimately QA the work before it goes out to the consumer. Really appreciate you taking the time to watch the video and look forward to speaking to you